It's late afternoon in a jury room. 12 people sit around a table with photographs, transcripts, and evidence logs scattered across its surface. The light from the windows has turned golden and thin. One juror, exhausted after hours of deliberation, leans back in her chair and says what several others are thinking. "I'm just not sure." This moment, this ordinary uncertainty in an ordinary room, is exactly why the law needed to invent a standard in the first place. The question at the heart of any criminal trial is how certain a jury must be before it convicts, and the answer courts settled on centuries ago was this: not absolutely certain. Absolutely certain is not possible in human affairs. A witness's memory fades. Physical evidence can be interpreted more than one way. Motive can be circumstantial. The law could demand mathematical proof, but it would convict no one and it would acquit the guilty. So instead, the system created a threshold, beyond a reasonable doubt. This threshold exists because it solves a problem. It's high enough to protect the innocent from conviction on suspicion alone. It's achievable enough that justice can actually function. But what does reasonable mean when doubt is the subject? A reasonable doubt is not a doubt born from imagination. It's not a theoretical possibility that somehow, in some way, an innocent person could have committed the crime. It's not a hunch or a whisper of uncertainty. A reasonable doubt is one that an ordinary, rational person, sitting in that jury room, looking at the evidence, could actually hold based on what the evidence shows and doesn't show. It lives in the gaps between facts. It lives in inconsistencies. It lives in alternative explanations that the evidence itself suggests. The prosecution bears the entire burden of building its case to this height. A defendant begins trial legally innocent. The state must prove guilt. The defense proves nothing. This isn't a burden split evenly between two sides. It rests, from start to finish, on the government. Many people assume that guilt must be proven through eyewitness accounts or confessions, but the law does not require this. A fingerprint at a crime scene, a timeline that places someone nearby, a pattern of behavior, financial motive. These pieces of circumstantial evidence, woven together tightly enough, can point so decisively in one direction that a reasonable alternative becomes implausible. When the circumstantial web is tight enough, reasonable doubt dissolves. Yet the final judgment belongs to the jury. Judges do not decide whether reasonable doubt exists. Jurors do. They weigh evidence. They assess credibility. They sit with the question and decide whether the state has met its burden. This power, this responsibility at the gate, is what makes the standard work at all. In that jury room as evening falls, the exhausted juror doesn't need absolute certainty. She needs to be convinced beyond reasonable doubt. Perhaps that means 90% confident, perhaps 95. The standard doesn't name a number. It names a principle: rigor without impossibility. Protect innocence without paralyzing justice. That is what the standard requires. And what it requires is finally, always, what 12 ordinary people decide it means.